Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Arvosis Report. John Arvosis here to talk to you about the latest news from Ukraine. How's everybody doing? Tuesday, December 27th. Introduce yourselves, folks, and let me get TikTok going here. Boom. TikTok. How are we all today? There's TikTok. There's TikTok. All right. Woo! Thank you, Carlos. Appreciate it. Anyway. Fun. Anyway, how's it going? Do the usual. Introduce yourselves. Say where you're from, if you would, while we're waiting for the TikTokers to join us. Hello, Flower Lady and others on TikTok. There is more falling from Windows action. We'll be talking about that today, among other stories. Well, I mentioned it the other day, but I've got more details now, which are just kind of crazy. Hey, Jamie in the UK, Australia, Belfast, Nebraska, all four corners of the world. Hey, guys, yes, I had a nice Christmas with the family. Ireland, Northern Ireland, we got everybody. Moscow, really? That's got to be interesting, unless you mean Moscow, Idaho, which maybe that's interesting too. Anyway, hello guys, welcome all. This is nice. You know, we got a nice diverse crowd on TikTok as always. Thank you for the hat there. Was that Manda? No, snipers? I'm trying to look here. That was Manda with the panda hat. Yes. Thank you guys. We do have the best trolls. We do. And trolls. Hi, whales. All right, guys. Let me start introducing. So I am John Arvosis. This is my nightly report, the Arvosis Report, where I talk to you about the latest news from Ukraine. I summarize the news for about half an hour and then take your questions for the second half. On TikTok, if you got questions, use the Q&A link in my profile. That's the easiest way to submit your questions. Most efficient, really, because that way you can even submit them as I'm talking now, and I'll see them in 20 minutes, which is good. The rest of you do use the comment box at the bottom. Thank you for the 2023 sniper. I appreciate that. And that was Thomas. Oh, maybe that was Frank Thomas. Okay, both of you. So many gifts coming in on TikTok. I'm getting lost. Thank you. Thank you, Big King, for that. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So on TikTok, and use the Q&A link. The rest of you can use the comment box. I am independent media, so I appreciate your gifts like you guys are doing on TikTok already. Thank you for that. Please keep them coming. I do this for free. I've been doing it full time, and I plan on continuing to do it full time so long as the war goes, and maybe even beyond that. So thank you guys for your support. All right, let's dive right in. So sort of a, smallish story. I don't know if this is small or big, but Russia has announced that it is going to ban oil exports to countries that abide by the $60 price cap. Now, you may know that the Western countries got together, the European Union, United States, Canada, etc., and agreed to a $60 a barrel price cap. Thank you, Paramarine and Sniper, on Russian oil, in an effort to keep Russian oil prices down, to basically cut back Russia's oil revenues so that it wouldn't supply the war machine. It's kind of a complicated scheme that our countries are using. It's not clear if it'll work at all anyway. Also, oil prices, along with natural gas prices, have dropped really low. Actually, they're already below where they were when the war started. Certainly for oil. Gas, I know, is down significantly. Natural gas, that is. So, let's see how much this is even needed. Anyway, the Russians are trying to fight back by now saying anybody who abides by this oil cap will not get Russian oil. Let's see what happens. Thank you, Boat Drinks, for that. Some more crazy, thank you, Big King. Some more crazy comments today from the Russians. I bring it up because it shows their weakness. And I think it's important to constantly look at where the Russians are coming from, because as I've talked about repeatedly, the Russians are constantly trying to scare us. Okay. They're always trying to scare us with the fact that, they're going to go nuclear and all this kind of stuff. But I think they're afraid. And I think it's why they keep acting out. Listen to this today from Russia's foreign minister, Minister Lavrov. Okay. Foreign minister is the Russian equivalent of the American Secretary of State. So listen to this. As for the duration of the conflict, the ball is on the side of the Kyiv regime and Washington that stands behind its back. They may stop senseless resistance at any moment. Okay, listen to this. The battle will continue, Russia says, until Ukraine stops fighting. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's this. Oh God, I just. It just goes this. They may stop this senseless. They may stop, meaning they can. Ukraine can stop this senseless resistance at any moment, the Russians say. The thing is, they're desperate for Ukraine to stop their resistance because the Ukrainians are beating the Russians. Now, this is taking a while. This is not, I always like to make the clarification. Thank you, Darlene, for that. That was very generous of you. I always like to make the clarification that just because Ukraine at the current point in the war is winning, it doesn't mean Ukraine's going to win this thing in a few months. Ukraine can be winning, but Russia still controls 18% of Ukraine's territory. It's going to take a while to get all of that back. It could take years to get all of that back. We don't know. But Russia keeps coming out with these comments. Again, like Russia's comment, which is basically, the only way this war is going to stop is if you give up. That's not exactly a statement from strength here. Listen to the rest of this, okay? Russia, we keep warning our adversaries in the West about the dangers of their course to escalate the Ukrainian crisis. He added, the risk that the situation could spin out of control remains high. Okay, listen to this. I'm sorry, that is the end of the quote. So the Russians, once again, are warning us, you better stop this war. Again, there's some convoluted logic here, but I want to walk you through it because it's really important. For anybody new joining us on TikTok, I'm just explaining some quotes today from the Russian foreign minister that I think, even though they're full of bluster, I think it shows that the Russians are really afraid and they know they're losing the conflict. The Russian foreign minister said that, listen to this again. Thank you, Kathy, for the meteor shower there. Says, we keep warning our adversaries in the West about the dangers of their course to escalate the Ukrainian crisis. The risk that the situation could spin out of control remains high, meaning, oh my God, we could be at war with NATO and that means nuclear and blah, blah, blah. If there's such a risk of nuclear war, and of course the whole world dies in a nuclear war, then why isn't Russia doing more to stop the war, right? Why did Russia invade to start with if there's such a danger of nuclear war? Thank you, Kathy, for the hat there. I don't think there is a danger of nuclear war, and I think Russia knows it. Russia likes to beat their chest about nuclear war a lot, and we fall for it too much, and it's unfortunate. We really do fall for it too much because we sit there and go, oh my God, they keep talking about nuclear war. We better do everything we can to stop this war because we don't want nuclear war. What we keep forgetting is that Russia doesn't want nuclear war either because, newsflash, the nuclear, like if there's a nuclear conflict between America and Russia, the world ends. We know that. Russia knows it. And the problem, thank you, Benji, for the little seafloor thing there. I mean, it's funny. I feel like these points are obvious, but sometimes I feel like when I'm explaining them, maybe they're not as obvious. Russia doesn't want nuclear war because they know they're going to die if there is one, okay? We know, exactly. Peace on Mars is saying nobody wins a nuclear war. The thing is, when I say that, sometimes I feel like it sounds like a cliche, right? Thank you, Benji, for the flowers. I feel like it's a cliche to say nobody wins a nuclear war. Like I'm not really explaining it. Quite literally, nobody wins a nuclear war, okay? But the thing is, it's not like we're so smart and we figured out that nobody wins a nuclear war, but those crazy Russians, they don't understand, they don't understand throwaways like we do to make it an arcane illusion. The Russians understand nuclear war. They understand nuclear weapons. The Russians know that if they get into a nuclear conflict with us, they all die. We all die, but they all die. They know that. They don't want nuclear war. They keep making these threats to us. They keep making these comments about the risk of this current situation spinning out of control remains high. I really wish, thank you, Big King, for that. I really wish somebody on our side would turn around and go, you know what, Boris? If you're so afraid of the risk of conflict spinning out of control, then pull your butts out of Ukraine right now. But stop lecturing us about nuclear war. Thank you, Sam, I am. When nuclear war is going to destroy every one of your cities and kill your entire population. And it's going to do the same to us, but it's going to do it to you too. So stop lecturing us about nuclear war because if anything, what Russia's doing is, again, they're telegraphing fear. I wanted to mention really quick, Bakhmut, the battle for Bakhmut. Bakhmut is, we got my handy dandy t-shirt map here. Bakhmut is the probably the biggest battle going on right now, but that could shift. The Bakhmut is in eastern Ukraine, okay, all the way over here, more or less where my finger is, give or take, okay, and it's a town that is currently occupied by the, oh my god, I'm already forgetting her, the Ukrainians. The Russians are trying to take it over, and it's really not clear why the Russians are trying to take it over. I mean, I shouldn't say that. We know why the Russians are trying to take it over. The thing is, it's because of their ego, which is an incredibly stupid way to execute a war. You don't try to take towns over because of your ego, but that's what's going on. Now, Bakhmut it's in eastern Ukraine. It has some strategic significance, not anything close to the significance of what Russia has spent in terms of the manpower, the weapons they've spent. They have spent months trying to take this town unsuccessfully from the Ukrainians, and they've lost a lot of Russian troops and a lot of Russian weapons. Let me read you what the Institute for the Study of War said recently about the importance of Bakhmut to the Russians. Okay, this is the Ukrainian town that the Russians are trying to take, and they're losing a lot of men and a lot of weapons trying to take it. Even if Russian troops continue to advance towards and within Bakhmut, and even if they force a controlled Ukrainian withdrawal from the city, as was the case in Lysychansk, Bakhmut itself offers them little operational benefit. The costs associated with 6 months of brutal grinding and attrition-based combat around Bakhmut far outweigh any operational advantage that the Russians can obtain from taking Bakhmut. What they're saying is the 6 months of war the Russians have waged trying to take this town, 6 months of their troops dying, of wasting their ammunition, right, wasting their weapons to get a town that just doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Thank you, Inspired Woman, for the disco. Here we go. On YouTube, hello, YouTube. Let me know that the sound is back. Hopefully it is. Definitely give me your questions in the bottom on YouTube. And I've got a Patreon as well. As I always say, any of you guys who have been following me for several months, if you like my work, if you like the support, the work I've been doing here with Ukraine, please do go over to my Patreon and maybe join up. $5 a month. It's a great way to help me out, and it helps just keep money coming because I am doing this full time and I'm trying to make this a full-time job, and it would help with your support. So it's patreon.com/Aravosis, or just go to the link in my bio on TikTok or aravosis.com on YouTube, and you'll be able to find it there. Let me pull this here. Thank you, Nancy. And please do keep the gifts coming on TikTok like Nancy just did with the Galaxy. Those are actually, I always make this point, not just for me. When you guys give gifts on TikTok or the gifts on YouTube. Thank you, Marcy and Kath, both. Wow. That's very cool. That TikTok thing. I don't remember that one before. Thank you, Kath. And Benji's, we've got a whale on TikTok here. Thank you, Benji. Thank you, Benji. We got to give the wave for Benji's whale. Thank you, guys. But I always like to remind folks, on YouTube, I think it's more obvious when you give gifts that you're helping people because it literally says the amount of the gift, so you know you're helping the creator. On TikTok, when people buy gifts, the creator actually gets a decent portion of that gift. I mean, TikTok takes a decent portion too, but it actually ends up putting a good amount of money in the creator's pocket on TikTok. So just keep in mind, anybody, including me, but anybody else you follow on TikTok, when they're doing lives, if you like what they're doing and they seem like somebody who's been doing a lot of work, buy those gifts because you actually are putting money in their pocket. Thank you, Jesse, for that. I appreciate that. Let's keep going here. So Italy reaffirmed its support for Ukraine today. This is an interesting story, and it's an example of the kind of story I like to bring up for you guys. Is YouTube losing its sound again or not? Just let me know, guys, if YouTube is getting weird again. But I like to bring up stories like this because there's sort of something deeper going on here. So Italy, the prime minister of Italy is was it Giorgia Meloni? She is a right winger. She is part of a coalition, a right wing coalition that includes two other gentlemen, Silvio Berlusconi, and the other one is Meloni. What's his? I forget his. No, she's Meloni. The other one is I've got his name here. What's his name? Matteo Salvini. Thank you, Diana, for that. Matteo Salvini. And what you've got going with those guys is the two of them tend not to be very pro-Ukraine. They tend to be pro-Russia, and they've got relationships with Russia, which is not a good thing. Okay. People were concerned when she came to power that she was not going to continue supporting Ukraine because her coalition partners, Italy has a coalition government, is not great on Ukraine. Thank you, Paramarine. Now, let me ask folks here really quick. I am not seeing any of the comments update on YouTube, and I'm just getting a little worried as to whether things are going okay over there. Is the YouTube, just for the mods over here, make sure YouTube is the last comment I've got is Roshin's, which maybe I'm going to reboot. You know what? I'm going to refresh the page one more time here because I'm a she had a conversation with Zelensky, and the government came out and did a really strong statement. Listen to this. Meloni renewed the Italian government's full support for Kyiv in the political, military, economic, and humanitarian fields to repair energy infrastructure and to work for the future reconstruction of Ukraine. The political analysts felt that this was really important, what Meloni did, and that it basically was a strong, I see you guys now at Roshin, yeah, I see you guys on TikTok, on YouTube, that it was a very strong sign of support from Italy, which was really good, frankly, since people were worried about the right-wing coalition not being as supportive of Ukraine. Thank you, Ellen, for those. Let's get going here. So Russia, listen to this. Russia is purging non-Kremlin aligned churches from the occupied territories in Ukraine. Now, again, just to show you on the handy-dandy map, the territories that Russia is occupying in Ukraine are all of these four here. There's four territories here and one down here, Crimea, which actually the Russians have been occupying since 2014, okay? Well, the Russians have occupied those territories, and they've started, listen to this is wild. They've started to forcibly integrate religious centers in Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine into Kremlin-controlled churches and mosques. So I got this from the Kyiv Independent. What they basically mean is they're taking Christian churches and mosques that are not part of, the official Russian government church and the Russian government mosques. And I mean, I'm sure in Russia, they would try to tell you, oh, the Russian church isn't part of the government and the mosques in Russia aren't part of the government. But Russia is a dictatorship. And in essence, you don't survive in that country unless you are. I know the Orthodox Church in particular in Russia, totally in bed with the government. I mean, 100%. I can't speak for the mosques, the Muslims in Russia, but my God, the church, absolutely in bed. Well, what they're doing is they're taking up. Jeff Schultz is leaving us. Mods, give a little bye-bye to Jeff Schultz. He's being a dick. So what is important about this is so anyway, the Russians are taking the church, and they're forcing the Christian churches to basically only be the officially sanctioned Russian Christian church, and the only mosques you can go to are an officially sanctioned Russian government mosque, right? What is important about this and what's interesting is right-wingers here in the States, the anti-Ukraine, pro-Putin right-wingers at Fox News, for example, have been sharing a story nonstop about how President Zelensky is anti-Christian, which, by the way, is a cute little dig at him being Jewish. It's also anti-Semitic, is why they're putting it out there. But saying President Zelensky doesn't like Christians and he's banning Christian churches in Ukraine. He's not banning Christian churches. Zelensky did crack down on the Russian church, which is a very small percentage in Ukraine, and is basically working with the Russian government, who, is committing genocide in Ukraine. So, but nonetheless, that's why I'm bringing up the story. Fox News has been talking nonstop about Ukraine being anti-Christian, but I don't think we're going to hear a lot about Russia being anti-Christian now that it's clamping down on the church. More on the oligarch. So I've got a nice little sort of large story here because I think it's interesting, almost funny, but funny in an ironic way. Thank you, Alex, for the hat. Listen to this. So the other day, I talked to you guys about a Russian oligarch who fell out a window, big surprise here, fell out a window in India and died. And this, as you know, I'm assuming you know, maybe you don't know, there have been a lot of Russian billionaires around the world who keep dying mysteriously by falling out windows and falling off balconies, falling out and falling off. Okay. Clearly, everyone thinks Putin has these people killed. He's having them murdered. A lot of them, some of them spoke out about the war. Other ones did not. My thought is that Putin keeps sending a message to all of the oligarchs by basically every few months killing some of them. Thank you, Dave. That the oligarchs are Russian billionaires. They're corrupt. They pretty much have their money because the government gave it to them. The government corruptly, when the Soviet Union ended, the government very corruptly basically sold off the state industries, because every industry was communism, right? Every industry was owned by the government. The government sells it off, but they sold it for next to nothing and gave it away to all of their cronies, right? All of their corrupt friends. So then these corrupt friends ended up being billionaires, but the government wants their 2 cents. So basically, Putin controls all of these billionaires, probably has very corrupt deals with them as well, because Putin himself, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, folks, or if somebody wants to find the exact amount, but I believe the estimate is that Putin himself is worth $200 billion with a B. Money that he has stolen from the Russian state over the last 20 years that he's been in power. Really amazing. Anyway, so this Russian billionaire is in India. 65-year-old Mr. Antov. And Mr. Antov falls from a window at his hotel in India on Sunday. Okay, this is from the BBC. I'm just going to read you the quotes from the BBC because it's so just incredible. Another member of Mr. Antov's 4-strong Russian group, he was with 3 other friends. Another of his friends, Vladimir Budanov, died at the same hotel on Friday night. Okay, so Friday night, one of the friends dies. Sunday, the other friend dies by falling out a window, right, out of his balcony. The superintendent of the police said Mr. Budanov, the second one who died, was found to have suffered a stroke, sure, while his friend, the friend who died, Mr. Budanov was the first one. So Mr. Budanov, the first one, they say suffered a stroke. His friend, the second one, the rich corrupt billionaire, Russian, was depressed after his death, and he died too. It's like, okay, the Russian consul in this section of India told the TASS news agency that police did not see a criminal element in these tragic events. Now, listen to what not actually happened, but listen to the background here. So the billionaire who got murdered basically by the Russian state, we think. Somebody posted a message on social media, on WhatsApp, which is sort of a social media platform, a communications platform that a lot of Russians use. Somebody posted a comment on WhatsApp where he was criticizing a Russian attack on a residential block in Kyiv that left a man and his 7-year-old daughter dead and their mother wounded. Okay. The quote that the guy put, allegedly the guy put, was, "It's extremely difficult to call this anything but terror." The message was deleted, and Antov, now mind you, okay, so this Russian billionaire, corrupt billionaire, posts a message to this social media platform and says it's hard, criticizing Putin's government for committing terror in Ukraine by killing civilians. Okay, yeah, exactly. And we know what happens next. He goes flying out a window, right? Listen to this. Soon thereafter, the comment is deleted from the social media app, and the Russian now posts it's deleted, and he posts that he is a supporter of the president, a patriot of my country, and he backs the war. The WhatsApp message had come from someone whose opinion on the special military operation in Ukraine he strongly disagreed with, he insisted. It had been posted accidentally on his messenger and was a highly annoying misunderstanding. Thank you for the gifts there, Ellen. Who's got access to your social media, right? Your spouse or your kids? There's nobody else. It's you, your spouse, and your kids. Who else got access to it, right? And I mean, anyway, he's dead now. So, what do you do? I am John Aravosis. This is the John Aravosis Report. It's actually the Aravosis Report. This is my nightly show, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., Monday to Friday, where I talk about the latest news from Ukraine, summarize it for you, and then we do question and answer. I've got a couple more minutes of news, and then we'll go to the Q&A. In the meantime, if you want to submit questions or just your comments on the various stories on TikTok, you can use the Q&A link that is in my profile. Go use that. On YouTube, just use the comment box at the bottom. Please do keep the gifts coming. The gifts support my work, and I really appreciate it, guys. On TikTok, you know what those are, and YouTube, you know those. I've also got a Discord set up, which if we don't go too long tonight, afterwards, I'll go to the Discord and hang out a little bit tonight as well. Discord.aravosis.com. Open-minded. Teresa thinks I'm not open-minded. Is it that I'm not open-minded about people jumping out balconies because a brutal dictator threw them out of balcony? Or am I not open-minded about genocide, Teresa? Sorry, Teresa. I'm going to guess it's Teresa. That's just my guess. But hey, call me crazy. Call me crazy. Hacker. Well, actually, that's a very interesting question. So Bush is saying on TikTok, could a hacker have posted the message? We were just talking about the story of a Russian oligarch, a Russian billionaire, corrupt. They're very corrupt. They're very tied in with the government, with Putin. He makes his money off of them. And the question was, this billionaire basically it looks like he got murdered by Putin in India several months after a statement was posted on his social media account where he was criticizing Russia's role in the war in Ukraine and accusing Russia of basically committing terrorism in Ukraine by killing civilians. Now, Bush just wrote and said, could it have been hacked? It's funny you say that, because that's a possibility I hadn't considered, but it's even juicier than what you just suggested. Because if I were a foreign intelligence agency and wanted to create lots of hell in Russia, lots of confusion and chaos, I would try to break into the phone of key Russians and post things that are critical of the government. And then Putin strikes out at them, right? And basically tries to kill them or whatever. Now, it's possible that it was a government that did this. It's also possible that it's simply hackers that did this, that some hacker knew who this guy was. And, it could have been anybody really anywhere that could have hacked this guy just to cause chaos. But that's an actually interesting idea. That's a very interesting idea. Russian internet regulator is going to be able to block sites in Russia without due process, sites that contain information about LGBT people and expressions of what Russia deems non-traditional sexual relations. One of the things Russia likes to do, it likes to strike out at minorities. During the Soviet heyday, the Soviet Union was super anti-Semitic. I mean, super Jew-hating like nobody's business. I mean, really bad. Russia today probably still isn't really great on the well, we know Russia isn't good on anti-Semitism because, for example, the head rabbi of Moscow had to flee the country as the war started in order to protect his family because they were getting so many threats. So Russia, not great on that. But what the Russians also like to do is the Putin government really likes to go after LGBT people, gay and trans people, in order to basically gin up the public, basically give the public an enemy to go after. So they love to go after gay people. They love to go after trans people. So that's what's going on there. Germany has contributed 35 million euros or $37 million to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, in Ukraine to support Ukrainian children during Russia's war. I've said before, I worked at the UN. UNICEF might do a good job in Ukraine. I don't know. I will say that United Nations agencies in general do a really bad job. And if you want to help people, you don't give money to the United Nations. I mean, I worked at the UN full, I worked at the United Nations, one of the headquarters in New York. Terrible place. You never want to give money to the United Nations. Give it to any organization before you give it to the United Nations, as far as that goes. And finally, Kazakhstan. Thank you, Kathy, for that. This is actually very interesting. Kazakhstan, businesses donated 41 generators to Ukrainian hospitals. They're giving them to the Ukrainian healthcare facilities. They're worth around $500,000. Obviously, they're giving these because the Russians are knocking out power across Ukraine. But what's interesting to me is that Kazakhstan is a former Soviet republic. So it's interesting that they're, coming out more publicly helping Ukraine because Russia's attacking them and all of that. I thought that was really nice. Anyway, all right, that's it for the news tonight. Let's turn to the Q&A, to you guys' questions. As always, like I said, you can use the Q&A link on TikTok in my profile. Submit your questions about the war in Russia, the war in Ukraine, I should say. Also, feel free to give your comments on any of the news that we're talking about. And the rest of you obviously can use the comments at the bottom. Did you hear Ukraine intercepted a call that 20 Russian men walked off and gave the location of the troops? No. Oh no, I didn't see that. Thank you, music, for the stuff there. One of the things that's really interesting, there was the last couple days there had been videos that appear to show runs on Russian banks. I mean, it's really interesting. The video I saw yesterday literally showed a Russian bank closing its doors and people were banging on the doors and the bankers going, "We're closed, we're closed." I know a couple other videos have been out there. Who is that? Sherry, I think. Yep, Sherry Moore. Thank you for the duck. We don't yet know if this is widespread or true. Yeah, Aflac. But, that's all we know. There have been a couple of them. There have been a couple of them now. A couple of these videos at least claiming. Yasu up to Chicago. We've got a Greek in the audience. Nice to see you. What else we got here? Did we ever get a TLDR in Bakhmut? I mean, basically, Bakhmut is still the Russians. Bakhmut, as I was saying, is the city in the east of Ukraine. Population used to be 70,000. It's much less now. But the Russians have been trying to take it over. The Ukrainians are holding on. The Russians have been bombing it for 6 months now, and they have been unsuccessful at taking it over. It's in eastern Ukraine. Oh, you know what? I didn't finish telling you sort of the final thing on this. The Russians have been trying for 6 months. All the military experts say there is no strategic reasons for the Russians to be spending this much manpower. Thank you, Kath, for that. This much manpower and this many weapons trying to get Bakhmut. It just isn't important enough. But what is going on in Bakhmut, and I've mentioned this to you guys before, what is going on in Bakhmut is that thank you, Benji, for the llama, is that you've got this really interesting battle going on amongst the Russian forces, okay? You've got the Russian military, the regular Russian military, and then you've got the Russian mercenaries, okay? So the Wagner group, who are basically soldiers for hire. And they're run by an oligarch, a friend of Putin. And what's going on is you've got both of them vying for Putin's favor and for the government's favor and for the people's favor overall. Thank you, Cheryl, for the hat there. And what it looks like is happening here is that the Wagner group, the mercenaries, have been leading this battle in Bakhmut. And it's not going great. It's been taken 6 months, right? And now what's happening is the Russians have been slowly doing better and better, but very slowly moving in on Bakhmut. The last week or so, it looks like the Russians are being pushed back a little by the Ukrainians, right? So not great for the Russians here. It looks like the Wagner group doesn't want to give up Bakhmut, because they don't want to have a loss. They don't want to have fought for 6 months fighting for this town and then lose it. And then it would be evidence that the Wagner group maybe isn't as good as people think it is. So again, it's kind of a crazy way to fight a war. You don't fight a war based on your ego, but that's what Russia is doing right here. Thank you, Kanowski, for that. Now, we've got 2 new questions or comments that popped in, or 3. Let me pull this up here. Oop, hang on a second here. I've got that, and then a super sticker from Paul. Let me get this here. Oops, sorry, who was that really quick? That was Cindy with the woolly hat. Thank you, Cindy. Let me start with Ben. Thoughts on Dmitry Medvedev's predictions for 2023 and Elon's response. So this was interesting. So Dmitry Medvedev, who's the Russian, what do we say, former prime minister, former president, used to be considered a liberal. Thank you, boat drinks, and dang it, damn, or dang it, a damn. Used to be considered a liberal, meaning a good, pro-Western or pro-Western as you get in Russia, and now is pretty much bad. I mean, he's as bad as it gets. Probably a drunk. Absolutely makes as warmongering, nuclear war, yay, let's go to war with the West as he can. I mean, the guy's bad. The guy's very bad. Thank you, dang it, for the little crown there. And he put up a series of predictions on Twitter. And they were crazy things like, in 2023, the West is going to fall apart. Thank you. What was it? Pishka for the crown. Texas and California are going to secede from America, and just all sorts of crazy stuff. Well, Elon Musk then decides he's going to weigh in and responds to Medvedev. Mind you, Medvedev is a top Russian government official. Thank you, music, for the hat. Top Russian government official and super anti-West. I mean, horrifically anti-West, calling for nuclear war, everything else. This guy posts a thread that is super anti-Western thread. Thank you, Addie, for the hat. Super anti-Western thread. And Elon Musk responds and says, epic thread, exclamation point. Basically, and I'm sorry, this is what that comment means. Basically meaning, this is great. You've got to read it. Well, the great thread he's talking about is a thread from a senior government official in Russia, the enemy, who is repeatedly called for the West to be nuked. And in this thread is calling for the West to fall apart and America to... He literally talked about civil war in America. For America to descend into civil war, and California and Texas to break away, war breaking out nationwide, and Elon Musk thought that was really cool. So I weighed in, a lot of people weighed in, pointed out the fact that Elon Musk, for example, makes a lot of money off of federal contracts. A lot of us have had security clearances. I wouldn't be able to keep my security clearance, the one that I used to have, had I said the kind of things Elon Musk has said. The kind of things he's said and done are things, you know what? It wasn't sarcasm. He tried to pretend it was sarcasm later on. Elon Musk has repeatedly shown a side of him that I would argue does not like this country. He is friends now with people who hate this country, with people who endorse violence, with people who are literally neo-Enzis, who he has let back on Twitter. He pals around on Twitter pretty much exclusively now with the farthest of the far right in America, people who tried to violently overthrow our government, people who supported the violent overthrow of our government, and that's who this guy is hanging out with, and he thinks he's going to get continue to get Pentagon contracts. Elon Musk can go to hell as far as that goes. He's not being sarcastic. So let me get on here. And by the way, it bit him in the butt and he tried backing off. Oh, and as a surprise, let's see, how much did Tesla stock drop today? Show me Tesla stock. Hold on, I'm going to pull this up. Tesla was plummeting yet again today. Big surprise, because this is all that happens with that stock now that Elon has been destroying it. Hold on here. I'm going to pull this up. Tesla stock today dropped 11.5%. Okay, just today. And a lot of people think it's dropping for a number of reasons, because of news from China, but also because a lot of people think, my glasses are crooked. I've still got to correct these things, that a lot of people think that Elon has been really screwing up. Over the last year, it's dropped 70%. Just over the last month, it's dropped 40%. It's dropped, I think, over 60% since Elon took over Twitter. The guy's a jerk. The guy's a jerk. I mean, it makes me sad because I like Twitter, but I really do have to adjust these glasses. Anyway, let me move on here. Melanie Sorensen. Hello, Melanie. Thank you for this. What do you anticipate Ukraine's further cultural separation from Russia will look like? God, I mean, what would it look like? Now that I'm not sure, because that's almost a question more for the Ukrainians. Oops, sorry, Elise, didn't mean to put you up there yet. I was just saving your thing, Melanie. What Melanie is talking about is that the Russian invasion, and mind you, the Russian invasion goes all the way back to 2014 when they first stole Crimea in southern Ukraine and then have been trying to foment, they call it civil war, but it's not civil war. The Russians basically sent in their own terrorists in eastern Ukraine to try to just foment trouble there for all these years, right? So what all of this has done has made the Ukrainians really hate the Russians, which honestly, not very surprisingly, right? I mean, that people aren't very happy with Russia. One of the interesting things that's happened is Ukrainians in the East, a lot of them spoke Russian. Ukrainians in the West, a lot of them spoke Ukrainian, I mean, as their mother tongue. It was always considered kind of less intelligent to, I've got all the super chats checked. Thanks, Roshan. They're saved. I'm going to get them one by one. It was always considered less like you were a redneck, like you were a hick, you were a country bumpkin, right? A country bumpkin if you spoke Ukrainian in Ukraine. The educated people spoke Russian, right? So this was kind of the dominance that Russia had in the culture, okay, for starters. Now you've got a lot of Ukrainians who are refusing to speak Ukrainian. They're refusing. I mean, the people who spoke Russian primarily are now speaking Ukrainian. So that's one thing. You're seeing it with the church, and this is not an insignificant thing in this part of the world. Russia, church attendance, or I should say adherence to the faith, isn't as strong as it is in Ukraine, but you've seen the Ukrainian church set its own independent path away from and apart from the Russian church. That was absolutely accelerated because of Russia's invasion the first time around, and it's been going on now for several years. You've now seen as well, I would argue, what Russia claimed to have been afraid of, but we question whether Russia really was afraid. But you are now seeing Ukraine way more tied in to Europe, I think, right? I think, look, Ukraine is certainly more European than Russia. I mean, I've been to Russia. Russia, and I think what we're seeing with this war especially, Russia does not have a European mindset. They don't. Ukraine, I think, has more of a European mindset, and you are going to see Ukraine even more now want to tie itself to Europe versus Russia. So, I mean, it's hard to say in what other ways, but if anything, it'll kind of depend after the war. But I think you're going to see Ukraine probably have more and more ties with Europe. You're going to see more educational ties, even more Ukrainian students going back and forth. And you're going to see even more of a Europeanization of Ukraine, while Ukraine itself, the whole idea of having any ties to Russia is going to be seen as, kind of distasteful in Ukraine going forward, Paul Gray, thank you for the super sticker. Elise, hello. Elise asks, if Russia cuts oil production, at some point the back pressure and cold will, thank you. Thank you. Oh, is that pediatric nurse, I'm going to guess? Thank you for the glasses there, I'm guessing. If Russia cuts back oil production, at some point the back pressure and cold will damage their equipment, and now there aren't Western technicians to fix their equipment. Oh, that's interesting. A huge game of chicken. Now, that's interesting. What Elise is talking about is Russia is threatening to stop selling oil to any country that abides by the Western countries' price fixing on Russian oil, agreeing to the sort of price cap of only $60 a barrel or less for Russian oil. And the Russians say any country that goes with that, they're not going to sell oil to. And the other issue, actually, which I think Elise is getting at, is Russia also threatened that they may cut back on oil production next year just to jack up prices even more. The problem, and I am not an energy expert, but I do know this. When you cut back on producing oil, it takes a lot more money to get the oil pumping out of the ground again. It's not that easy. One of the issues we had here in the States was during the COVID, Demand plummeted, of course, right? People weren't driving to work anymore, so demand for gas plummeted, and the oil producers stopped, or the oil companies stopped producing oil. They started shifting a ton of their money into paying off their debt and everything else, and then we didn't have enough oil production. I know that it is, for whatever reason, getting a well started again is not cheap. So that's it. But what Elise is raising is another point, which is, what if they don't even have the technicians to get going? In other words, they need the money to do it, but they also remember a lot of the Russian oil companies had deals like Sakhalin Island. Who was it? Was it Shell or somebody else that was in Sakhalin with the Russians? And they pretty much had to pull out because of the sanctions and everything. These were deals where, they're not just getting money, they're getting talent from the Westerners. So, yeah, hopefully, I hope it's going to be hard for the Russians because we want the sanctions to keep working, Exeter, yes. Solomia is also saying it's important. This was from our discussion earlier. It's important to say that Russia has made the Ukrainian language illegal over 100 times. Yeah, when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, the Russians pretty much tried to, dampen any kind of regional pride or ethnicity or anything because they didn't want a revolution on their hands, right? CNN, Rob Wallace saying, CNN reports that at least 20 mysterious deaths to Russian oligarchs and Russian generals. Also, there are several, thank you, Natalia. Also, there are several consider Putin's wealth making him the richest person in the world. He could, because if it's 200 billion, yeah. Yep. Well, and I agree with WC here as well. WC says Russia could have taken the European ideology all the way to the Pacific. What I think meaning basically tie yourself to Europe and really apply it through all of Russia and say we are going to be a European country. And we all would have opened our arms to them from the 1990s until now. That's the thing. It makes me sad in a way, although I'm less sad now than I might have been 10 months ago, to see how much Russia has just shot itself in the foot. Thank you, Pam, for the groundhogs there. How much Russia has really shot itself in the foot here. Thank you, Natalia. Russia had an opportunity. Russia likes to whine. Thank you, Kyle. Russia likes to whine about how, we were all so mean to them after the Soviet Union fell. Let's remember a few things here. The Soviet Union, which was pretty much dominated by Russia, terrorized the world for 70 years. Well, 70 years. Was it? Yeah, 70 years, actually. 70 years. They terrorized Europe for 50 years. Russia and the Soviet Union held Eastern Europe hostage for nearly 50 years. They enslaved that population. They murdered that population. It was a brutal communist dictatorship. Those of us who lived through it, I say lived through it historically. I did not live in Eastern Europe, but I visited Eastern Europe and I visited the Soviet Union. Scary. I was in East Germany and I was in the Soviet Union. Scary, scary, scary places. Okay. Russia inflicted that on the world. And then when the Soviet Union dissolved, what happened? Well, the former hostages of Russia, of the Soviet Union and Russia said, you know what? We're not really thrilled about the country that just enslaved us. Please save us, NATO. Would you please put your protective arm around us and keep us protected? And NATO said, yes. The Russians didn't like that. Well, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't have taken Europe hostage for 50 years. Maybe you shouldn't have taken Ukraine hostage for however long Ukraine was a member. I want to say Ukraine might have been eaten up by Russia a little further into the 20s, but you're talking a good 60, 70, 65 years that they had the Ukrainians. Thank you, Natalia. Maybe if Russia, had Russia not abused the republics that were part of the Soviet Union all these years, had Russia not just laid waste to Eastern Europe and held Eastern Europe hostage, criminally hostage for all those years, maybe all those countries wouldn't have come screaming and running to NATO going, oh my God, the mad guy has been holding us hostage in the house for 50 years. Would you please protect us, right? Having said that, there was still a move in the West where a lot of people felt like, you know what? We should embrace Russia. This is a moment of opportunity. We had a lot of American businesses went there. There was an opportunity in the 1990s. What did Russia do? and again, my friend Mary, and I say she's online today. She can probably say this better than I do because she knows this a lot better than I do. But, Russia started to turn into a big kleptocracy. It was a big corrupt government, mafia, and everything else in the 1990s. Putin comes in, and Putin decides to take us back to the Soviet Union again. So, I have sympathy because I think it's unfortunate that Russia didn't take advantage of the end of the Soviet Union to finally tie itself to Europe. And to finally, Russia could have done the same thing that Eastern Europe did and said, you know what, we want to join NATO too. Let's all be part of one bloc where literally there's no danger of us attacking each other and we can all focus on our economies and integrate into Europe. And Russia wanted to continue its BS line about how its culture is the greatest in the world. And, again, how many people are fighting to get into Russia nowadays? 1 million clamored to leave Russia, right? We got 2 million a year trying to get into the United States and 1 million a year trying to flee Russia, right? We've got to stop them from coming in. They've got to stop them from leaving. I'm not saying America is the best place in the world because I've lived in Europe too. And Europe, I'd rather live in Europe sometimes, I have to admit. But nonetheless, those are all places people want to live. Nobody wants to live in Russia. But they've got this sort of hubris and this attitude and this, not just pride, but this arrogance that, anyway, it upsets me because I think Russia had a real opportunity there. They really did. The problem is, Yegenrid is saying we need another Gorbachev. The problem is the Russians think Gorbachev was like a traitor. Gorbachev isn't really popular in Russia. They think he gave away the farm, that he gave away the Soviet Union. Thank you, Melbaum, for the snowboard. So it's hard to say these glasses, but I'm going to adjust these glasses afterwards. What else we got? Actually, let me pull up TikTok because I didn't pull up your guys' questions on here. I know Iceland. I have not been to Iceland. I've been dying to go to Iceland. I will go there at some point. I want to go see the horses that run funny, as I recall. I saw somebody do a video on them.
One thing that seems...
Let me see. Q&A on TikTok. Ooh, now I'm getting warm here. Let's see. Why am I muted? I don't know, but I'll ask the moderators to unmute you. Okay, this does not help, though. Oh, God. User 8290368. Okay, here's the problem. I can't even begin to have them. Thank you for the hat there, by the way. I was trying to see who gave me the hat. Oh, wait, there was Garland. Oh, a couple things here. Sorry, Blue Sky gave me Garland. Azamak gave me a hat. And I just saw the butterflies. Melbaum. Thank you, Melbaum. Somebody, but they've got a crazy name. You know what? You need to go in. First of all, you need to go in and let me see. You're not blocked, though. You got muted. You should be fine. But you need to go and create a real name because people think you're a troll by using the goofy name. And also, I can't even tell the mods how to unmute you. She got you. You're lucky. Cindy got you. Yeah, user 8209 blah, blah. That doesn't fly. You got to go in and even use a fake name, but use some kind of a name because it makes it easier for people to recognize you and not think you're, an evil Russian bot. RW, what is this? My great-grandfather was Slovak when his daughter, my grandma, and her son, my dad, went to Austria in the 1959s. She went to Czechoslovakia to see her family. She went. Dad stayed in Austria. Okay. I'm not sure where you're going with that story, RW, though. Sorry, was there more to it? Did it cut you off? So let me see here. I think their mentality does have to change. I think, it reminds me of, the Putin having cancer thing. Benji's asking about the stories about Putin having cancer. I'm not sure I believe it. I will say this too, just because somebody has cancer doesn't mean they're going to die. Even people with bad cancer can live 10 or 20 years, right? Putin's 70 years old. He could have bad cancer and live till he's 80, 85. He can do a lot of damage in the next 10 years. So, it's hard to know, though, because when you're dealing with Russia or the Soviet Union, for that matter, who the hell knows? They hide so much of the truth that you really don't know. You really don't know. So he could have helped problems, but we're never going to know. Remember, even Osama bin Laden, we couldn't find out we couldn't find out all the health problems of Osama bin Laden, but also the guy lived for a long time. Obama finally got him back, Was it 2012? I'm already forgetting when it was exactly that Obama got him, but 2012 or so, that was 11 years after 9/11. The guy lived for 11 years and he only died because we killed him, right? So, you can unfortunately live a long time even if you're evil, That's the other question. Dark Phoenix is saying, who do you think will take over if Putin dies? Thank you, Benji, for the coral. God only knows. The concern is that it's somebody worse. I mean, let's face it. Currently in Russia right now, you don't do really well by being thank you, spirits here. You don't do really well by being a liberal. And by a liberal, I mean, classical, not even classical liberal, being a free thinker that thinks Russia should join the West and stop being so darn, authoritarian and dictatorial. You don't do very well in that country that way. You don't. Plumber, I'm giving you one quick warning. Yeah, even better. Don't even. I think maybe Plumber was being cute. I'm not sure they were. Yeah. Sorry, already forgetting where we were going with that. Plumber was being an idiot. Yeah, give him 5 minutes. That's probably a good way to doing it. Oh, who's taking over? Yeah. So I mean, it's not like there's a lot of good people that in principle could take over. And that, by the way, is one of the concerns that you've always got. I always tell people this. It's kind of a funny thing to talk about. Was he a troll? Okay, even better. One of the things that I always tell you guys is, in foreign policy, in sort of government decision-making, generally speaking, it's considered illegal. Like in the U.S., it's against U.S. law to assassinate foreign leaders, okay? Doesn't mean we haven't done it before, whatever, but it's against U.S. law. If you're going to do it, they always tell you, be certain of who's coming next. Be certain of what comes next, because it could be even worse, and then you're even worse off. And there's risks in trying to kill a foreign leader. So you weren't necessarily talking about us killing anybody, but, if you try to kill a foreign leader, that's a declaration of war, really, against that country. Thank you, Natalia, which is pretty risky right there. The other risk is you don't know who's coming next. And if the person coming next is even worse, then what was the point in trying to sort of get rid of the current leader? So, yeah, we don't know who's coming, but I don't think at this point there's any sign of it. Now, if the powers that be in Russia rise up and decide to get rid of Putin because they think this war was a mistake, that could be interesting, right? I mean, at the very least, if somebody came in and said, you know what, this is ridiculous. Why did we invade? Why did we go to war? Maybe that's useful. I don't know. Oh yeah, sorry, Kelly. So what was the second part? I know it is kind of annoying. That's just a feature on YouTube or whatever that I can't go. Oh, here's RW's. Okay. She was afraid the Czechs would find out he was a Slovak's grandson and would press him into the Czech army. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I see. Here we go. Sorry, the RW. So, okay, my great-grandfather was Slovak. When his daughter, my grandmother, and her son, my dad, went to Austria, so the Slovak goes to Austria in 1959, she went to Czechoslovakia to see her family. Oh, to see her family. I see. She's living in Austria now. She went, your dad stayed in Austria, and she left your dad in Austria because she was afraid the Czechs would find out he was Slovak and press him into military service. Yeah, no, that almost happened to my uncle in Greece, of all things. My mom and my uncle were born in Greece. He left Greece when he was 6 years old and went back in the late 60s, and the Greeks tried to draft him. Late 60s, early 70s. Maybe it was early 70s, and they tried to draft him. And I think it was early 60s even. It was early 60s. It wasn't late 60s because my uncle, who helped at that point, was in prison as a political prisoner because he was one of the most powerful politicians in Greece. But in the early 60s, he still wasn't in prison yet, so he was able to help my uncle out. But yeah, that's not an unknown thing to have happen, unfortunately. Yeah, so thank you, Rachel, for pointing that out. I'm glad or Kelly, for pointing out the second half of the comment for me to look at. What do we got here? Been to Russia many times. I think people are really friendly. I've met very nice people in Russia. I will say this, though, which is kind of interesting. I've never been to. That's funny, Rufus. Rufus follows me on. We're Twitter friends, but I don't know Rufus, even though we're both in DC. But I've only been to the airport in Denmark and was very impressed. It was a really cool airport. I will give you that. But I've never been to Denmark itself. I would love to. Trust me. At some point, I got to get over there. What were we saying here? Sorry, guys. I was looking at the various stuff here. Oh, Russia, the people being friendly. I found the Russians very friendly too. Now, one of the things, sort of as I get older too, I found that lots of people with abhorrent political beliefs are very nice people. It doesn't mean they wouldn't kill you if they had a chance, but they can be very nice people. So that it's kind of a weird sometimes trying to figure out what the story is, because you meet people, you can go to parts of our country and meet very nice people, but they'd probably very gladly throw you in jail if they knew anything about you or worse. So that it's kind of weird trying to figure out the Russians I met were very nice, wonderful people. Yes. But I think there's a reason that Russia keeps getting dictatorships and authoritarian governments for hundreds of years. And maybe it's the Russian people is the reason that the Russian government is always so awful for all of these years. Zeus is saying, my great-grandfather fought against the communist forces in the Greek Civil War after fighting in the Greco-Italian War and being in the Greek resistance. Wow. That's a lot. Upcoming guests, nobody's scheduled. I will say that guests are a bit of an issue for you YouTube people, because the guest thing gets complicated, because I can't really beam guests to both YouTube and TikTok, because TikTok, when you beam from the outside, it kills the viewers and nobody ever finds out the show is live. And we end up with like literally 200 people watching. It's terrible. YouTube doesn't get a lot anyway. I'm going to see, but it's complicated. I would either have to have them on just YouTube or just TikTok, which is possible though, because I do have some guests who are refusing to come on TikTok, which is very annoying. So I could always have them come back and just have them on YouTube. I could do that, but we'd have to see. What else? Oh, it is 6:00 already. You know what? Let me, America's great to its people. Look at its treatment of the indigenous. Before I block Eddie, which I will, I'm going to block Eddie and then let me talk about Eddie. So Eddie is one of these people who likes to use a smattering of knowledge of history, but a smattering to try to make idiotic comments. Here's the thing. America treated its native population very poorly. Guess who else treated their populations very poorly? Everybody in the world has treated their various populations horrifically. Every population has pretty much killed its neighbors. I will do a recap in a second. Every population, not every, but lots of people have enslaved lots of other people. Doesn't make it right, but it just, then you've got human sacrifice. I will say we never committed human sacrifice. Some folks out there have done human sacrifice. I mean, there are lots and lots and lots of bad people throughout history, and pretty much they exist in every country, every people's, and every people's. I would almost be willing, I sort of hedge, because maybe there's one peace-loving people out there who were never dicks to their neighbors and were never dicks to their own people. But far too many of them were horrific, were absolutely horrific to somebody. And they killed their neighbors, and they were just horrific. And they would take whatever land they could get. And like I said, it's possible somebody, I mean, maybe in Canada, the First Nation folks in the North, maybe, I don't know. But I got to say, the history of groups around the world is pretty bad across the board. So when I see anybody like that who likes to say, Americans, you're so bad because you did X, Y, and Z, if you're trying to say it was bad we did that, you are correct. If you're trying to say we're bad people because we did that, well, then what you're saying is that you're bad people and every country in the world is bad people. And maybe if you're a sort of a nihilist about it or whatever, and you think the entire world sucks because the entire world has been the history of treating people badly, then maybe every group of people in the world and every ethnicity sucks. Maybe, but I don't really buy that. So Any case, I just get annoyed when people bring that kind of crap because it's a sophomoric knowledge or not even a knowledge citation of history that's meant because he just doesn't like America. He's just anti-American. It just pisses me off, you know. Anyway, Daniel, Malcolm Gladwell has a great bit about McDonald's opening in Russia. In communism, you sought the favor of the server. In capitalism, the server must favor. Oh, the server. I'm sorry. Oh, I see what you mean. Thank you, Stiletto. Appreciate not graffiti, the confetti. In communism, the customer sought the favor of the server, so the waiter or waitress, right? In capitalism, the waiter sought the favor of the customer. Getting the staff to smile was a real challenge. That's funny. That is kind of funny, actually. Actually, it's not just communism. I will say this too. You know, I mean, I love France. But there is I have like a PhD in how to get things done in France, and more than 50% of it is knowing how to suck up to women functionaries and basically be their slave. I mean, I can go into a bank or anywhere else and get anything done because I know how to just be like, bonjour madame, je suis vraiment désolé. Je comprends pas du tout. You know, I mean, literally, you come and you're like, thank you, Real James, for the snowfall. You literally have to get on your knees and go, I'm a complete freaking moron. I don't know what I'm doing. Could you please help me? I'm an idiot. And then she'll help you. And by the way, and then she could be very helpful. My friends were always surprised because I would get people to do all sorts of things for me in Paris because they were nice. They were nice to me. I mean, I was nice to them. They'd be nice to me. So there is that aspect. And my nurse, when I was in France, I had a retinal detachment when I was in France, very scary surgery. And the nurses were just awful to me. I love France. I loved living in France, but the nurses were just horrific. And in France, clearly, the nurses think they're doctors. I mean, or whatever. The doctors, on the other hand, couldn't have been nicer. My surgeon gave me her cell phone number and told me, thank you, Cheryl, for the snowfall. My surgeon gave me her cell phone. No, my doctor in the States has never given me their cell phone. Gave me her cell phone and said, if you have any questions, call me at home tonight. And I was like, and I literally told her, I said, I'm not calling you at home. She goes, no, it's okay. And I was like, okay, fair enough. I said, if it's an emergency, I'll call you, but I'm not calling you at home. You know, whereas the nurses, I was having some kind of bad reaction to my surgery. It's the middle of the night. I'm in pain. My head is in agony. And the nurse will not believe me that I'm not feeling well. Will not believe me. It was just, I mean, absolutely crazy. In any case, so that's also kind of there's a weird European functionary thing that exists as well. I can speak for France because I know I've traveled around Europe, but France is the country I really know. It's a weird control thing that you've got going in France. I will say that. Thank you, Me95. In any case, I was just defending on the communist comment a little bit there. All right, let me do the quick recap and then let's call it quits, guys. Russia bans oil exports to countries that abide by the $60 price cap. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov gave a series of quotes that were just ridiculous. Hang on a second. Did I have one more thing here? I thought I did I? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, sorry. Paul Gray super sticker. Thank you, Paul. I think I already thanked you for that. I think I thanked you for that. Yes, I did. Lavrov just gave a series of quotes that were ridiculous. Thank you, Me95. I'm not even going to go through them, but basically they were the kind of more bravado quotes that made me think that once again, Russia's afraid they're losing the war, and the only way they're going to win it is by convincing us to be afraid of nuclear war. Institute for the Study of War talked about the battle for Bakhmut in the east and how the Russians have basically just, they've wasted 6 months attacking that city when it's just not worth it. Italy reaffirmed its support for Ukraine today, which was great. Russia purged non-Kremlin aligned churches from the occupied territories in Ukraine. I gave a much longer story about the Russian oligarch who fell out the window in India. Happens a lot there. The Russian internet regulator is going to be blocking websites from Europe and elsewhere that are pro-LGBT. Germany has contributed 35 million euros to the United Nations Children's Fund in Ukraine, and Kazakhstan businesses have ponied up 41 generators for Ukrainian hospitals. Woo woo! All right, thanks, guys. Thank you, Marcy. Everybody else. I'm going to call it quits and go. Oh, Daniel. Oh no, that was Daniel's there. I'm going to call it quits and go. We'll go to Discord for a few minutes. Marion, thank you, darling. Spasiba, or Jakyu, I should say. I just can't get my my Ukrainian down. Thank you, Marion. All right, so there you go, guys. Let's call it quits. I will see you guys tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern time, US. What's today? Tuesday. It'll be Wednesday. We can go to Discord for a little bit. I don't want to go too long, but let's go for a little bit. Thank you, Kanausi, for that. That's discord.aravosis.com. Once you get there, if you're new, you've got to click the buttons and accept and all that kind of crazy stuff. But once you're part of Discord, our Discord, go to the left, scroll all the way down, and you'll see video chats or voice channels or whatever. It's a voice channels, I think. And you'll see the section that says John's After Party. So head there if you can. So please do. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, moderators, for everything. Thanks for all the gifts, everybody. And voila. Let's call it quits, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right. Thanks, guys. You guys, I'll say bye to first. Thanks again, Marianne. Appreciate that. All right.